Hello Macro Geeks, it's Mike Motes again, and today I want to talk about shooting flowers in a soft focus, abstract, dreamy looking mode. Very cool style, and it's a style that does really well with other macro photographers because they understand that shallow depth of field where we're only getting maybe an eighth of an inch to a quarter inch in focus, and the rest of it just softens down into a blur in the background, okay? It's not a style that you're going to show your family and friends and they're going to pat you on the back and say, what a great job you did. First thing out of their mouth is say, why is it out of focus? A lot of non-artistic people and non-photographers do not get this style. I've had people even tell me they've submitted these images into their monthly camera club competition, and some judge came in and said, it needs more in focus. And that's a photographer saying that. But if you're not a macro photographer, you don't generally understand this style. But it's a very cool style, and I like it a lot. It's not easy to do. It's easy to do as far as setup and shooting, but the how it works out in terms of the depth of field and how much is in focus and how much isn't in focus, you never know when you shoot these. It's just a crapshoot, and once you get it on your screen and you start processing, you'll know right away whether you like that image or you don't like it. Okay. All right. So this is a silk flower right here, just for demonstration purposes. Didn't have any live ones. We're in that coronavirus thing where we can't go out, and so I don't have any flowers to shoot right now. But anyways, this is going to be a good example of how this works. Okay. All right. So when I set up my shot with my flower, and I like to use daisy type flowers, large flowers that really wide, and Gerber daisies are really nice for this. Oxeye daisies, some wildflowers. Any type of daisy type flower works the best for this. So what I do is I don't want to set up so that the front of my lens here is parallel with the flat subject of this flower here. You can see it's a fairly flat subject, and if I get real parallel with my lens, even shooting at the smallest f-stop, 2.8 on this 90mm Tamron, I will get quite a bit of it in focus because we're parallel to a flat subject, okay? Now you always want to be shooting in those smallest f-stops. Now most macro lenses will be at a 2.8 on the smallest, or if you have a longer telephoto lens, you might see a 3.5 as the smallest f-stop. So make sure that you are set at your smallest f-stop whenever you shoot this style, okay? Now, like I said, I don't want to shoot them where I'm parallel to a flat subject because I'm not going to get that really nice shallow look to it. So what I want to do is I want to take this flower and turn it on its end and shoot into the end of the flower, the outside edges of it out here, okay? So like this. All right, now, because there's so much depth from the front of this flower to the back, that's where we're going to get that really nice shallow look as it goes through into the back of the flower. Now, we got to figure out where's our focus point. The focus point should be on the very tip of whatever petal is closest to the front of your lens. So these petals out here in the foreground, I want to focus on one or two of those petals in the foreground on the tip of it, and then it's going to get about a quarter inch of focus at that 2.8, and then it's going to slowly soften into the background to a blur. All right. Now, the reason why we put this focus point on the very foreground, the tips, like I said, is because when someone views your images, they're looking for something in focus. And if it's in the foreground, it's going to be really easy to spot that focus point, okay? If you have your focus point somewhere in the mid or the back of the flower, you're going to have the blur in the front, and all you're going to see when you view that image is a big old blur, and then somewhere in the background there's going to be the focus point. We want that focus point in the foreground, so when the viewer looks at the image, they spot it right away. We want that area, that sharp, right in the foreground. All right, so that's why we're going to focus on these tips out on the edges that, again, closest to the front of the lens. That's pretty much it. Once we get that focus point on there, we're going to shoot at the smallest f-stop. Now you can go, a little bit higher if you wanted to. You can, go above 2.8 up into say a 5.6 or something like that, and see if you like maybe a little extra depth of field. I typically like to tend to shoot them with, again, just that straight 2.8. All right, and I like that look the best. Now, there's again, a lot of different styles of flowers you can try to do this with, but I find these daisy type with all the individual petals coming in at the lens to be the best, okay? But you can try it with different ones and see how it works out for you. You might find some other types of flowers that this style works well too, but always remember, keep the foreground sharp. Whatever you focus on is in the foreground. Now, another thing is that you can't autofocus these. With macro photography, you should never be auto focusing anyways. You should be always manually focusing. But this particularly style is really important that you manual focus, because you want to make sure that you get the focus point on the tip of that petal that you're trying to focus on. Because the autofocus has no clue where you're trying to focus, and it can't read your mind. So make sure that you manual focus and find whatever the tip it is that you like that's closest to the front of the lens and focus on that. And many times I'll just use the tip in the middle of the frame, or maybe over to the right or left a little bit. But again, it's not hard to do, but the shallow depth of field will create such different looks that you never know what you're going to get. Now, if you're farther away from the subject, you'll get a little more depth of field at 2.8 than you will if you're in minimum focusing distance, and you're going to get 1/8 of an inch in focus. And farther back, you might get 1/4 inch, and as you go farther and farther back, you get more in focus. But as you go farther back, of course, you're going to get a wider scene of that flower. We don't want to do that. I like to shoot where I'm filling the frame with the flower, so I'm usually in pretty close on it, okay? So I'm going to show you a video here with a bunch of clips of images that I've shot of this style, and all at the 2.8. And I'll also do another video in the future on why this particular style does not do very well with the general public. In other words, non-photographers, non-artistic people, even photographers many times. And I'll do another video on that. When I was in the art show business, I learned a lot about that. All right, so check out these images coming up here.